Okay, I'm going to start over. Hi, everybody. I'm Elizabeth Hamblet. I am the author of 7 Steps to College Success, a pathway for students with disabilities, just so you know who I am and why I'm doing this. But I want to welcome you because I'm very excited about this event today. I have with me the College Parents Central team, and I have been subscribing to their newsletter, listening to their podcast, following their social media, reading their blog posts for quite some time. I think they are really smart and generous and lovely people. And so I wanted to give you all a chance to ask them your questions. So we're going to get started in a minute. I am monitoring comments to the best of my ability with my technical savvy. And so feel free to put the comments in here, and I will add questions in here, and I will be sure to ask the ladies here. So I am going to let Lynn Abrahams and Vicki Nelson introduce themselves because they'll tell you all of the important details I'll probably forget, and we'll get started. So Lynn, just because I'm an alphabetical order kind of gal, why don't you start and tell everybody a bit about yourself?
Okay. Hi, everybody. So my name's Lynn Abrahams, and I am a learning disability specialist. I work with college students and have for my whole career. I work at Curry College and the Program for Advancement of Learning. So we're a support program for students who have learning challenges. But I also am a mom, and I've had 2 sons who have gone in and out and through college. So I can speak about the college experience from both sort of a personal point of view and what it feels like to let them go and go through it with them, and from a professional point of view, where I see new students every single year. We're about to start in a couple weeks, and I'm already feeling the butterflies and getting ready to go back to school and meet some new students. So that's who I am.
That's the thing about being a teacher, right? You really never get out of that rhythm and that, that little bit of anxiety before the semester starts, no matter. Yeah. I'm still having nightmares where I forgot to study for the exam, like all semester. Yeah. Woo. Okay. And Vicki.
Yes. I'm Vicki Nelson, and like Lynn, I come with 2 perspectives, and one is as a professor. I'm a professor of communication at small liberal arts, same small liberal arts school that Lynn is at, Curry College. And I'm also the parent. I have 3 daughters who have all gone to college and come out the other side, and we've all lived to tell about it. And it's very interesting to look at this idea of college students and college parents from that double perspective. I think it wasn't until my oldest first went away to college that I started looking at my students differently and saying,
interesting,
this is someone's son or daughter. And I began, I always liked my students and connected with my students, but I looked at them differently when I began to look at it that way. So it's lots of fun to wear 2 hats.
It is, yeah, definitely. And my youngest just graduated from college. I think it definitely makes you as an educator go through that experience differently. But it's just amazing too. Like, have you seen differences over time from like your students getting out of or starting college, and then what you're seeing now for students? Has a lot changed?
I think so. I think back when my kids have been out of college. My first one graduated, I can't do math, but she graduated more than 10 years ago.
That's math, that works.
Yeah. Well, I stopped at 10, more than 10 years ago.
Sure.
So quite a while ago. And I think students and parents have connect now in a different kind of way.
Oh, that's interesting.
Back in the old days, and back when I started College Parents Central in 2009, so that's been around quite a
Wow.
while now. And there was a lot of talk then about helicopter parents and parents zooming in and hovering and all of that. And it's not that that doesn't exist now, but I think one of the difference I've seen is that it's more of a two-way street now. It's not just the parents hovering and the kids, trying to get them to back off. The kids, the students want that connection as much now, and rely perhaps a little more on parents. I think that's probably one of the biggest differences that I see.
And
I've
I
seen
also-
I'm sorry, please, Lynn, go ahead.
I was just going to say, we've gone through COVID, and I think that has also impacted and leads to the same thing, which
Yeah.
our parents and our students are very close.
Mhm,
know,
mhm.
And so it's a different, and there's some real positives to that as well,
Yeah, yeah.
So
I think that's exactly what I was going to say, which is that I've seen a lot of comments, it's all anecdotal, but from colleagues that COVID, really changed that dynamic, but maybe it also just, moved ahead trends that you were all seeing. So Vicki, I had not realized that you had started this blog so long ago. So I know you're a professor of communication. So I guess you were communicating.
I was.
Blog. And so what brought you and Lynn together, and what made you decide to start the podcast?
Yeah, well, I as I said, I started the blog in 2009, really because there wasn't much at that time. And I think that's a difference too over time. If you were to Google or to look online for college parents or that sort of thing, there wasn't a lot. There was very little at that time. And I think colleges, so many colleges now have a parent office, parent support, and they didn't back then. It was just beginning. So I was sort of answering that. It was as my daughters started to go to college that I realized, if this is this confusing to me, and I work in this world, what must it be like for people who are not used to higher education? So that was what got me started. And then, Lynn can take the story from there, but our kids started college sort of around the same time, and we're colleagues, we're at the same school. So we knew each other and we began commiserating.
Somehow we started commiserating. Yes.
Yeah, we started talking together about, what is it here and there, and the rest is.
And then, the next step was that we were feeling overwhelmed ourselves. And so what we did was we started workshops, creating a workshop for parents at Curry College. And it started out really with summer orientation. And so we decided to have, a workshop where we could talk to parents, not just as, professors at a college, but as parents, about real nitty gritty, what happens in the summer before, and what happens when you start moving into college, and how do you be a parent when your kids are living away from you. So these are conversations that Vicki and I were having all the time. And we thought, there's definitely a need for some support for parents and families. So it started with the summer orientation, and then we created more workshops, that kind of went through the whole year.
We did family weekend and accepted student day, because different things are going on.
It's different things are happening.
No, that's right. Yeah. So I'm interested. I had not, both of my kids have been in college, and one school had a parent face group Facebook group run by somebody employed by the college who was sort of a parent liaison. I wasn't aware if there was an office, the other student definitely not. So if you are a parent of a student who has dropped your student off or is about to, that's something you can ask about. Be sure to get in. Many schools have some kind of Facebook group for parents. It may be run just by other parents, started by other parents, but look for that. And then start asking questions and get some details. See if there is a parent liaison, because that's something that's sort of different to me. I was going to say, so let me just, you said so many smart things. Oh, and you're talking about, what to do with drop off. I just enjoyed, was that last week or 2 weeks ago? You guys did the episode of the podcast on drop off.
Move-in day.
I'm sorry?
Move-in day.
Move-in day. Thank you. Yes. Yeah. And how to make that, go smoothly for you and your students and their roommates. And, it's hard. It's hard to walk out of that room. I've done it twice, but,
yeah.
And the last time I cried all the way to the parking lot, but I waited till I left the dorm.
And that's
so I thought that was
and the thing is, it's different for every student. So if you have 4 children who go to college, you're going to have 4 such different experiences.
Yes, and you said that too. Yes.
Yeah.
Some can't let go, and some say, "Mom, it's time for you to go."
And we need to listen to them, don't we?
Yeah.
When they say that, yeah. So this is a time of, I think great excitement, but sometimes for parents, great anxiety. So what do you think are some positive things that would surprise parents about their students' start at college?
So I'm going to start.
Go ahead.
Okay.
So there are some wonderful things that happen that you just wouldn't expect. One is I found that there was a lot more quiet in our house. There was a lot of, lack of tension in the house. Yeah. One of my kids, my first son, when he would go away to when he was in high school, the entire household revolved around him when he had to write a paper. We knew everything. And when he went to college, I didn't have to know all those details. And it was a real pleasure. The other thing that was a real pleasure for me was that I got to talk to my kids in a different way when they lived outside of the house. I remember talking to them about books that they were reading or things they were learning, but speaking more as equals and getting excited with them about some of the things they were thinking about. And because I didn't have to bother so much with cleaning up and doing the dishes for that, just all that caretaking stuff that happens when you're living at home, I had more, room for them to pay attention to them in a different way.
When we used to do the workshops, and we still do workshops, if, now that we're coming back live, we like doing them in person if we can, but we call it caretaking to coaching.
Yeah.
And I think that shift in roles was a real, it's a little tough. It's a little difficult at first, but when they're home, as Lynn said, there's all the caretaking, which is, where are you going, who's driving, when are you going to be home? Could you pick up some of the shoes in the front hall, and what about all those dirty dishes in the sink? And there's just and being keeper of the calendar sometimes, and paying attention and carpooling, and that's all caretaking. And when they go away, that alleviates that, and now you slip into that coaching role, which is on the sidelines. The coach, when it comes to the game, the coach is always on the sidelines. But good athletes always say, I couldn't have done it without my coach. My coach was the one who got me there. So I think, if you can get a little comfortable with that shift of role from being in charge of everything to being on the sidelines a little, you can really enjoy watching your student blossom. And
Mhm.
then all of those things that Lynn was talking about, being a little more equals. And I had conversations with my daughters when they went away to college that we never would have had at home,
Mm,
because our relationship was different. And
yeah.
now, because I was separated from their day to day, we could have some pretty cool conversations. And then there are all of those upsides. The water bill went down and the gasoline bill went down. And there wasn't nearly as much laundry to do. And, I mean, when you think about the
Food.
data, the food bill
Right.
went way
So,
down.
so maybe take some notes, and if you, like me, are crying, on your way back to the car, just have an index card handy, folks, of all the things that you're going to enjoy when you
Yeah.
get
But
back.
it's okay to cry all the way home too.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
And actually, what was nice was when my youngest got dropped off, my eldest, her school started a little bit later, and so she was home, and I did get to see her empathy. She knew I was a little sad, and so she got to take care of me a little bit. So, they do grow up. And I will say, so before we came online, we were all talking about who is going to be looking after, or putting our dogs in jail. So while we talk about empty nests, let's just go offline, off course a little bit. Do you have any recommendations about maybe not getting a dog when your children leave for college? Do we have anything to say about that? Anybody get one once the nest emptied?
Well, I'm far enough out now that I'm actually enjoying the empty nest. And we had a dog. We lost a dog a few years ago. But as much as it was wonderful to have her, it's sort of nice not to have that responsibility too.
Mhm.
So
I mean,
you might want to think about it. And it's definitely a wonderful thing.
I have to say too, though, empty nests are, sometimes they don't happen when you think they're going to.
Oh, yeah.
And both of my kids did end up coming back home after school for different periods of time. And then they went off again. So now we are empty nesters now, but there was definitely a few years of in between. So it's not so clear cut sometimes.
We have often said to parents who are, kind of sad about dropping their student off to college, just wait 4 years
And
they'll be back. And all three of mine did. I mean, and that talk about things that are changing more and more and more. The students are doing that now if they can do it with that first job, because it's the only way they can save up money. And then one of my daughters came home again with a husband and a dog. So I didn't need my own.
So what I hear you saying is maybe like put a pause on the home renovation plans. There was a commercial a bunch of years ago about, was it for IKEA, where the kid comes home from college and his parents have turned his room into something else, and he has like a little class, 6'4", and they've given him like a little teeny tiny space with a twin bed.
Right.
Yeah, they have plans.
Flex rooms are what we all need.
Oh, okay. I like that. So yeah, hopefully, your kids are going to go off. I just saw a great quote from Lisa Damore, who is so smart. And she said, let's not talk to our kids about college being the best 4 years of their lives. Because certainly that's setting anybody up for disappointment. But as we think about students getting started, and maybe some of them will have some anxiety, everybody's has to make a whole new set of friends, and learn to live by themselves and do things. So what are some things that you think parents should be on alert for when they're talking to their student, that's sort of, or maybe there's some guidance about what's sort of typical, and then what might be a sign that maybe they should go to the counseling center or talk to the RA, about the roommate, because it's not just sort of a typical roommate problem, or anything that you think.
Want to start? Want me to start?
Well, I would jump in. You talk about it, going to counseling and all of that, and that implies that the student is sad
Mhm.
that the student may be homesick, and
Mhm.
knowing that counseling is there and using it is absolutely good. I mean, I've talked to students all the time that our counseling, because almost every college has a counseling center,
Mm.
and those are counselors who are tuned in to college student issues.
Mm.
And so that can be really helpful. But that the idea of homesickness isn't necessarily inevitable.
Mm.
But some students do just fine. Some students are hit with it half an hour after they're on campus. You know, mom and dad drive away and they're suddenly homesick. And then sometimes I think some students are and parents are surprised because they think, oh, great, I've gotten through these first 2 weeks and I'm not homesick. And then
Right.
it hits. So
Oh,
it
wow.
you know,
Yeah.
it can come later. And so being a little tuned in to what your student is saying and talking about, and helping them normalize homesickness a little bit,
Mhm.
because it's not something that most of their friends are posting about on social media. And
True.
it's not something that their friends down the hall, even in the dorm, are necessarily talking about. I think so many students, when they have, you know, these feelings, think they're the only ones.
Mm.
So talking to your student about it's okay, and it's really culture shock. Because if and the same thing happens very often to students who study abroad, and they
Mm.
go, and it's a honeymoon for the first beginning, and then they begin, you know, things are different, and I don't have an anchor. I don't have a foundation that I can fall back on in the same way, because the world is very different. So being tuned in, being ready for it to happen, saying it's okay, I think that helps.
And I also think that, you know, as parents, we know some of the questions to ask when they first are away, like some of the basics, like, are you eating? Are you sleeping? Are you leaving your room?
Yeah.
Are you going to
Right.
classes? Though, you
Mhm.
know, to me, those are the things that would tell me that there's a more serious problem, if there is, or not. You know, if
Mhm.
your kids are having trouble, you know, leaving the room and getting to meals, you know,
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
sign that there's
Yeah.
something wrong. If they're not going to classes, you know, that's always a sign.
Yeah.
Um, you know, so you want to make sure that before they leave, you have sort of a, you know, an arrangement where you're going to talk to each other and tell each other
Mhm.
the truth, you know, and
Mhm.
it's okay to say what's going on, because that's how we can, you know, help each other. So, you know, having a conversation about, let's, you know, deciding even how much they're going to talk before, you know, when students are away. Are we going to talk once a week? Are we going to talk once a day? Are we going to, you know, what are we going to do? And then if something dramatically changes, you know that something might be off.
Mhm.
There aren't any rules about this, but it's good to have conversations before your kids leave about how it's going to look.
Yeah, I think that's really smart. I mean, we joke because when I was in college in the 1980s,
Mm,
long distance phone calls were more expensive. I mean, things that our kids cannot
yes.
conceive of. And
Mhm.
so I called home Sunday nights and have kept that tradition. And then when my kids went to school, I said, okay, Sunday night is it? Because
Mhm.
basically, a lot of us, unless you have a meeting or a religious ceremony at that time, are home or back where we're supposed to be. And so that was sort of the time. So that can be, you know, scheduling that appointment. But it's interesting because, you know, in the higher ed communities I'm in, I see my colleagues talking about actually, you know, so that's one kind of student that is really on their own and really needs to be reminded that, yes, you need proof of life, you know, once a week, as we used to call it with my youngest. But then there are the ones who, you know, walk out of class and are texting.
Right.
So, you know, do you have any recommendations for parents whose kids are actually very much in touch with them? You know, and how they might ease that adjustment, you know, because some people think, and I'm not as, you know, smart enough for this, but that too much contact, affect their adjustment to school.
Mhm.
I agree with that. I think too
Yeah.
much can be difficult, and the goal is going to be some independence. But in order to get to that goal, you might want to think about taking baby steps towards it. So you might start out with your kids, speaking every day, or and then backing it off a little bit.
Mhm.
I work with students who may have struggled a lot in high school, and so their parents are used to being very, very involved. And I, often caution parents to be careful about getting too involved, in the sense of, like not getting on their portal and reading their emails, sharing passwords. I have talked to students about how to coach their parents, how to say to their parents, no, I don't want to give you my password.
Mm.
Because there is getting too much information, and that's not good for either the parent or the student. Everybody starts at a different place, and then everybody starts weaning back a little bit.
Mhm.
And I
Ladies,
think what you're touching on, Lynn, is parents have to be willing to. I mean, we say all the time, it's not when you send your child to college, you're not letting go, but you have to be willing to lengthen the leash a little bit. We'll stick with dog metaphors all through this.
Don't tell my cats. Don't tell my cats.
But it's saying to your student, well, how about we talk every other day instead of every day, means parents have to be willing to only talk every other day and instead of every day. And sometimes that feels really hard, especially if they've gone away now, and I want to stay connected. You talked earlier about how nice it is when you're not involved in what's going on with your child every day, because you're caught up when he's writing papers and all of that. But on the other hand, it is nice to know what's happening with your student when they're coming and going and all of that. It was hard for me, especially with the first one, to to not know every day where she's going and what she's doing and
Right.
what's happened. And then I think I found out with that first daughter that I could let go a little bit and not know everything she was doing every day, and we still had a good relationship. And then it was a little easier for the other ones. But those baby steps. And if you're ready and your student is still texting you all the time, my suggestion would be, you don't have to answer a text the moment you get it. And all of my family and all of my friends know that I don't, because I don't have my phone with me all of the time. So they'll text me, and sometimes it's a few hours before I answer that. And that can sort of loosen a little bit too.
And that's sort of a classic meme right now, right? You message your teenager 15 times and you don't get an answer, and finally like, why are you bothering me? But they text you once and you don't respond in 5 seconds. So, Mom, or Dad, what are you doing? I need to know this. And Lynn brought up something really interesting, and in my job as a college learning disability specialist is not part of my world, but some of my colleagues have noted that when it comes to sharing passwords for the portal, whatever it is, the course management system, learning management system, whatever you call it. And if you've never had a student, and I see we have somebody, by the way, watching from Nairobi, Kenya. At a lot of colleges, if you haven't had this experience, or if you homeschooled, there's an online system where your student logs in to often get their assignments, download the syllabus, see their grades, things like that. And at some schools, it is a violation of their technology policy to share that. So obviously, if you keep it a secret between, the student and the parents, then nobody will know. But there are always these anecdotes about some parent who logged in under their student's ID, emailed a professor, and then forgot to change the pronouns, like from I need to ask you something to, she needs to ask you something, and they get busted. And what the results of that are, I don't know. And, again, I think, look, I assume in some cases students are seeking their parents' assistance with some of this stuff, with advocating and things, but it's so important, to be aware of those rules. And also, and kids mature at different times, but we need to be helping them do this, giving them a model they can follow, but having them, handing it over, right? Because if they want to be at college and they want to be independent, then they need to be ready to do that stuff.
And I think, I'm sorry, Lynn.
No, please go ahead. Yeah.
I think two things, and one is keeping in mind the ultimate goal, which is for them to have that independence and to be able to advocate for themselves and do those things, and remembering that that's what you're working toward, rather than that short term, I've got to log in and to help you do this paper. What's the long term? And then the second thing is, if you can, start that in high school. Don't wait to suddenly try to cut them loose when they go away to college, but that you can start in high school, even middle school, in finding little ways that you can encourage them to advocate for themselves, to be a little bit independent, and then it doesn't feel like such a shock when they first go away to college.
And I just want to add that sometimes if a parent feels that they really need to be involved all the time, like helping with papers and helping with even time management, and then maybe the student isn't quite ready for college, and that's okay. We have many students now who are taking breaks in between high school and college. And it can be such a healthy thing to do, to get a job or to, take some time. The brain is still maturing, it's still changing. And so if they're not quite ready, it's not a failure.
I think all the time about the fact that now with neuroscience, right, we know that the brain isn't, the prefrontal cortex that we need for executive functioning isn't fully developed until you're 25, which is a little late. But in Europe, I know it's much more common to take a year. They rarely start right after high school. And so, I keep thinking that we've sort of, when I say we, I mean our society at large has sort of screwed this up, because now that we have the information, it's hard not to look at some of our students who aren't quite ready to be on their own, going off and saying, well, it doesn't mean never. It just means not right now. Not right now.
And for some students, that gap year might be after the first year. They might go to college, and if they're struggling all year long, it's okay. And many schools, I don't know whether I would say most schools, will allow a student to take a leave of absence, to take a year, and then come back. So if you plowed ahead and your student said, no, I want to go to college, and it doesn't seem right, take a break.
And if I might take a moment and pause for a little commercial, if for those of you who have students with disabilities, again, I can't even see if I'm doing this right now because of the recording, but my book, there we go.
I'm on vacation, or I'd have my copy too.
Oh, thank you, Lynn. It's disability services directors that I interviewed talk about readiness, and so do some of the college consultants that I know and trust, one of whom is watching this right now. Hi, Sherry. Talked about readiness and how to assess it, because I reckon it is more art than science, trying to figure out if your student is ready to go. But I think when we talk, as you both just did, about the amount of adult assistance, I mean, and you can send them to a school like Curry, which has the PAL program, where they will get certain kinds of assistance with certain kinds of frequency. But if they're, if they can't do any assignments without somebody, sitting down and prompting them and kind of working them through the process, it might be, and, something to think about. And just the independent skills. I mean, every single article you read is like, can they do their laundry? Can they make a meal? And they're not probably going to make a meal freshman year, but the self-care piece, is really important. And ladies, so since my audience is often parents of students with disabilities, do you see anything specific in the parental interactions that you have? Do you think there are parental interactions that perhaps you should not be having with, at times? And any advice? I'm sort of not articulating this very well. Some parents are very accustomed to advocating for their students. And understandably, for in these situations, are anxious about what we're talking about, right? FERPA, you guys have a great post on FERPA. I'm going to grab that and stick it in the comments. But for those of you who have not heard of FERPA, and this doesn't matter for you, Regina, unless your students come to school in the US, Family Education and Rights Privacy Act. Which means that without your students' permission, nobody at the college can talk to you, but they can send you the bill. And even if your student signs a FERPA waiver, it still doesn't obligate professors and disability services offices to talk to you. So I'll stop talking now and let you guys talk about it.
So even if you do sign something, professors are not going to speak with parents in general on the college level. So it's what's going to happen is that parents are going to be speaking to their kids. And so that's probably the biggest shift from high school to college, is that as a parent, you get your information from your kids. You're going to ask them what's going on. Professors are not going to return your calls if you do reach out to them. Professors, what you may want to do is talk to your kids about how to talk to their professor. Or talk to your kids about how to talk to their RA, the resident assistants, if they're having trouble in the dorm. You are not going to be the one in the driver's seat. It's your kids. So I've had situations where parents have been like wanting to change their kids' schedule. So say I've advised a student and, we've come up with a schedule that looks good. And then I'll get a call from the student that they talk to their mom and they want to change certain classes. And, I just want to remind, families that the college personnel, the professors and the advisors know the system and know how things work. And even though as a parent, you think, you have a better idea, then talk to your kids about it. Mm-hmm. And then have them talk to their advisor about maybe some of the changes, and maybe some of it makes sense, but maybe some of it doesn't. Mm-hmm. So again, the students in the driver's seat, and not the family, the parents.
Mm-hmm. And I would just add that everything that Lynn is talking about applies to all students, not just students with learning disabilities, and their parents, jumping in. And the other thought about that FERPA waiver, which students can sign, saying it's okay for the college to release my grades to my parents, or to talk. I guess two things. One is parents should know, if your student has signed that means if you call and ask for your student's grades, they can release them to you, but they're not going to automatically send them. Mm-hmm. Just because your student has signed the waiver doesn't mean that automatically you're going to get something in the mail. And the second thing is, I would encourage parents to think carefully and talk to their student about that waiver right at the beginning, because sometimes it feels automatic. Oh, here's this, please sign this so that I can get your grades and I can talk to and that, I think, sends a message to that student right away that you don't trust that if you have that conversation with them, as Lynn is encouraging, that they're going to tell you the truth. it feels as though I don't trust that if I ask you, I'm
Yeah,
going to get the
it's so
information. I
interesting.
want to be able to get it directly. And I'm not sure that's a message we want to send to students right away. Now, if you start to have a sense that they're not telling you the truth,
Mhm.
then you might say, I think it's time to talk about a waiver.
Well, and I think too, I mean, we talk about the preparation, that stuff can start earlier. Again, to invoke Dr. Lisa Damore, she really encourages parents not to use those grade portals. And it's hard, but at the same time, it's practice for having them take care of themselves, and seeing the results of what they do and what they don't do, and then being able to talk about what happened, and if they want to go to college, I think saying, look, I'm not going to be in your business, I'm not going to check your portal, you are responsible for yourself. This is if you would like for me to pay for you to go to college, I think some things have to change. And maybe, if it's the student's choice to look at the portal together, when they're in high school, and at least start to establish, as you say, that trust. And maybe parents won't always think that they've earned that trust. But then I think you have a conversation about, what happens at college? Are we paying for you to go to college? Is there, are we going to start at a local community college first? And just because we need to see that we can pay that tuition and take that risk right now before we send you someplace else.
Another thing to start earlier in high school is talking about making mistakes, and
Oh yeah.
how you learn by making mistakes. And I think sometimes the way we work our system in high school is that it's got to all be successful, and it all has to, kids have to do really well. There's a lot of pressure to do well.
Yes.
And making mistakes is normal. That's what happens. To kind of normalize making mistakes you can learn from. It's so important.
Yeah,
I
and
find
that's
some of my students are terrified of making a mistake. And part of the work I do with them is to help them to stop putting so much pressure on themselves to be perfect.
Wow. Vicki, you alluded earlier, or didn't allude to, but talked about, the sophomore year gap year. But for those who, think they're going back and they're okay and everything's good, have you seen where sophomores sort of start to hit some road bumps? And, should parents of ingoing sophomores think about anything, or be on the lookout, or, advise their students that something might happen?
I think it does take some students by surprise, because yay, I made it, I'm successful through that freshman year. And in some ways it's hard to go back in that sophomore year, because there's so much hoopla going on when you're a freshman.
That's
There's
so interesting.
welcome week,
Yes.
and you're the new ones on campus, and everybody's reaching out, and the ice cream truck comes to the freshman dorm, and there's all this stuff going on, and the sophomores just come back to the work. And so
that's so true. I'm so sad now.
well, but I think if they're not prepared for it,
Yeah.
it takes them by surprise, and that thing called sophomore slump can be a real thing, because not only are they no longer, the special kids on campus because the freshmen have come, but by sophomore, they're taking more real courses. It's not that what they did freshman year isn't, but there's a lot of first year seminar and intro to, and intro to, and intro to, and then by sophomore year they're getting down to the 2000 level courses, the second level up, so certainly the courses are a little bit harder. And then the other thing that hits, I think, in sophomore year, and is really something parents and students might want to talk about, is that's usually the year for many students that they have to declare a major. And so some students who came perhaps as undecided students in the freshman year, and that's fine, they're ready to explore. Or that came freshman year saying, I know I want to be a fill in the blank major. And then they did a class or two, and now as they come back as sophomores, they're saying, I don't think that's where I want to be. And that's really a scary time. So yeah, sophomore year has has some issues of its own that can be alleviated, I think, if you talk about, how are you going to feel and what's it going to be like. And a lot of students, too many, leave at the end of freshman year. So sophomore students come back and some of their friends are gone. And there's that going on. I think sophomore year is often a year of some struggles with motivation, some dissatisfaction. I find a lot of the students that I work with start to talk about transferring sophomore year. Many end up not transferring after all, but they have those thoughts and that conversation in the sophomore year because it just feels as though things are not right. And so thinking about that and understanding that that can happen and all, I think helps.
I was gonna say, is that the 1-year itch, so to speak?
Maybe.
For those of us old enough to know that movie, right? You guys just put out, so I was just searching your amazing blog for transfer blog posts. But the first thing that came up was, what are stranded credits and why do they matter? And that is waiting for me in my inbox, folks, because I subscribe to the College Parent newsletter, College Parents Central newsletter. So can I ask, Lynn, can I just ask you, because I cannot multitask, could you drop in, can you send me in Zoom the link to the sign up page? Because I just realized
newsletter
on Facebook. Yes, please. Somebody drop it to me.
You want it now. You don't want to wait. Okay, let me find it.
And just so we don't lose, in case anybody logs off before we finish up.
And I will try to find it.
There is so much good information.
Oh my gosh.
On this website.
Yeah.
It's incredible. In fact, we often tell parents that if they ever, when their kids are away, and if they happen to get a phone call that, maybe their kids are upset about something, and often by the next day that's all taken care of. But while the parent is anxious, look up College Parent Central, because there's so much good information.
Yes. And unlike some communities online, just reading that blog post is going to calm you down. Whereas going into some parent communities will wind you up, because other parents will say, oh my gosh, you should be really worried about that. Those communities have their benefits and they can be very helpful, but use them with caution, I think, is what I would say.
So Elizabeth, I'm going to apologize. I don't think I'm going to be able to get to that right away now.
I was going to say,
if you just go to College Parent Central, and then kind of scroll down, the sign up is there on the sidebar.
It is, okay.
And then I will send it to you and you can put it in something afterward, but I can't get to it right now.
So how about this? While I am looking, because again, I'm multitasking, not a strength, can you also talk about the email service that you guys offer for freshmen?
Oh, first term.
First term.
Yes, I can do that. First term is a newsletter service that parents can sign up. It is a paid newsletter. Sign their students up, and we send an email once a week for the first semester. So 15 emails. They come on Sunday nights. And they're tips and strategies and suggestions for, thinking about success and, how to use the calendar and how to time manage and all. It's a lot of information that students often get at orientation, which happens in the summer. And then 2 or 3 weeks in, it's hard to remember it all. So it's basic, mostly academic, a little bit of social, but mostly academic, that comes at the right time. So they get these little reminders every week. So at midterm time, there'll be some things about how to study for midterm exams and what to talk to the faculty member about when you get your midterm grades, and add drop period or withdraw, when might you want to withdraw from a class. So it's, we can't remember all of the information that we're given, and sometimes we don't know what information we need. So parents can sign their students up and they get an email once a week, all through that first semester. And a lot of students find it a little nudge when it's needed.
And it has the benefit of not being from the parents.
Yeah, or from the school. Yes.
Yeah.
And we do send a copy to parents. So parents, and that's intentional. So parents sometimes can follow up and know what's going on for their student at that time of the semester, and some of the conversations that they might want to have.
So one of the things is we got a few more minutes. Please, if you have questions, drop them in the chat. But I can't say enough wonderful things about you. Excuse me, I'm going to make a noise. So one of the things that I have found with podcast and the blog is other resources, wonderful other books, other platforms to follow. And one of my favorites is College Student Health Handbook, Jill Grimes. She is amazing. Talk about, speaking of things you don't want to discuss with your kids. Lots of sexual health stuff, lots of substance use and alcohol use guidance, and it's such a wonderful book. Check out the college parent interview with College Parent Central interview with Jill. I will try and drop that here. Check out her book. Are there any, with 2 or 3 weeks left before drop off, are there any other ones you want to make sure you mention?
That was my top choice. I just
I'm sorry.
it's one of those books that you really want to buy a copy and hand to your kids.
Yes.
Because they health stuff is there's just so many questions, and that is such a good one. Another thing I might recommend is we talk sometimes about this about alarm clocks.
Yes.
There's a clock called Clocky.
Yes.
That jumps off the table and runs around the room. And I actually did that for my first son when he went away, because getting up was really hard. And if you use just your phone, you might roll over on it. And, so if you get something else, sometimes that can be helpful.
I have had students who show up late to class or miss class, and they say it's because I rolled over on my phone during the night, and the alarm didn't. They use their phone as an alarm, but they really need a backup. And the backup should not be the wake up call from mom.
No.
Yeah,
and there are students who rely on that, and that's when I would really say, if you have a student who's in high school and you are waking them up in the morning, that's one of the first things you can start to let go, and give them an alarm clock and have them be responsible for that. If they miss the bus, they miss the bus and they have to figure it out.
And I know that that's hard for parents of students like with ADHD who have poor executive functioning, and that the parents are thinking, well, but he's in high school and I don't want that to ruin his experience or his GPA, or but those consequences in high school, again, if things don't change before they are second semester seniors, I think that there's some data you have, right, to help you think about readiness. And again, this is where you start to move, as the wonderful Ned Johnson says, to the consultant model.
Yeah.
Where you say, okay, so here's a problem we have. What are your suggestions? What is your proposal for how we're going to fix this? Because, as long as you're still involved in it, you have no, sense of how it's going to look. And you know, I realize there are some teenagers, college students and parents who are fine with that relationship. So, you know, I guess if that's working for you and it's fine with your student, but I always think about their sense of self-efficacy and what I worry about. And this is a psychological concept about, you know, having the belief that you can do something. And the research shows that if you have that belief, it will actually drive you to do the things that you know will help you be successful. And so I that's one thing to me about supports and certain supports that students receive in high school. You know, whether they have a disability or not. I have worked, you know, I have friends who are college consultants who have worked with students with no disability who are still getting tutored every single day after school with the goal of having the highest possible GPA so that they can get into what the family considers, you know, a rigorous school. And, you know, I guess you can continue to have that level of tutoring, you know, if you can afford it at college. But you know, Vicki spoke earlier about the message that it conveys, and I worry about that.
And when that student graduates from college, are they going to meet with a tutor every day after work to work on the memo they were supposed to send or the something else? So, you know, being able to do the work yourself matters.
It's sort of this developmental sort of thing, you know, kids are going to mature, they're going to get stronger and stronger. The goal is, you know, that kind of independence and kids believing in themselves that they can do it.
Yeah. Have you seen students, especially, and for those who are not familiar with the PAL program, please remind me what the acronym is for.
So it's the Program for Advancement of Learning. And it's one of the first programs set up in the country for college students with learning differences. So it's a support program.
And so for those of you who are watching this who aren't aware of that, there are about a few dozen colleges in the country that offer these fee-based additional services for students, often with ADHD and learning disabilities. Sometimes there's a program for students with autism that's actually its own program. And sometimes the students with autism can be a part of this kind of a program. And for that fee, your student gets additional services. Often some of the folks that I've spoken to have said that the goal over time is for students to reduce their use of it, and they have tiers of support with corresponding fees that go down as your student uses less. But what's important,
and there are two colleges in the United States that that work with only students who have learning differences, and that's Landmark College and Beacon College.
Right. So one in Vermont and one in Florida, so that if your student has very strong climate demands, you can probably meet them one way or the other.
Yeah.
But I think what's important too is with a lot of these programs, paying that fee again still doesn't necessarily get you access to professors. It doesn't mean that the folks like Lynn working in these programs, sometimes they will speak to professors, but not necessarily to advocate, maybe just for a check-in. So what is your contact with professors like Lynn?
So I don't have much contact with professors. I usually work with, you know, I work with students and I coach students on how to speak to their professors. It's very unusual that I would reach out to professors. So students have to be able to, you know, when they're coming to college, they have to be able to take, you know, more control of their educational needs. Now, in our program, we would, you know, mentor students and talk to them about how to get what they need. So even when you're paying for a program, there are some key differences between high school and college that remain key differences. In college, you know, materials not modified. They don't. There will be no changes in the curriculum. So students have to be able to do the regular work. You know, they may get accommodations in terms of testing, but the material itself will not be modified. So that's like a key difference. I certainly think that if people are in high school and they have questions, that they should read this book.
Checks in the mail, Lynn.
Because this is the book that I wish I wrote. And it really, it helps you prepare for that major shift between high school and college.
But I think too, you know, for those and for parents listening whose student doesn't have a disability, you can also access College Parent Central and the blog posts that go back to 2009. I mean, it's such a treasure trove. And what I love about getting your newsletter is stuff that I wouldn't even think about, but that once I see the topic, I go, that's a really good topic. It's all in there. You guys have covered it. Let's see, I did cut you off. I know, like, especially with move-in coming, one of the books you love is Naked Roommate. Anybody have a copy to hold up? That's handy.
I don't have a copy.
I
Right
don't
now.
have them with me.
All
Good
right.
sense of humor. He has a
Yes.
great sense of humor.
But, you know, for a lot of students, living with a roommate is going to be a unique experience. And so we can prepare them for that.
It's worth it just to know the story of the naked roommate. And
It's
how
a
the
great
book got its
story.
title.
Harlan Cohen's great.
I've got to get off my butt and get that read. But there's also a podcast episode about the ladies' favorite books. So,
and if people go to the College Parent Central website and to the resources, tabs at the top, resources, there's a drop down and there's a list of recommended books, over 100 books, I think, at this point that I have on that list. And about half of them have reviews. So people can get a little sense, you know, different people look for different things. Lots of books.
well, this here, I'm going to pop that into the chat for everybody. Did I do the right one? Oh, no, it didn't copy. Hang on. Speaking of executive function and prefrontal cortex, here we go. So to wrap this up, I want to thank you so much for your time. It's always a pleasure talking to you, and I learn something every time I do. What do you want to leave folks with? What's the best way for them to get in touch with you if they want to ask a follow-up question about any of these fantastic episodes or blog posts?
For starts, collegeparentcentral.com. And there is on the About page, there's, you know, my contact is there, but it's vnelson@collegeparentcentral.com. And I'm always happy to get emails and to answer any questions that I can. And then that's also where they can sign their student up for the first term newsletter if they would like them to get that for their first semester.
And I think for me, actually, mine might be my Curry email, labraham@curry.edu.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. I look forward to diving into my most recent email from you and reading those posts. I will catch up on Naked Roommate because it sounds like fun to me. But thank you both for your time and for being just such, you know, great resources for parents and so kind and empathetic. I think it's, again, both an exciting time and a very anxiety-provoking time. And reading all of your stuff just makes it feel manageable, I think, and maybe not so scary. And I think it gives parents real practical strategies that they can use to get forward. I just think it's wonderful. So
you're very kind, and I hope that's true for parents.
it's I stand by all of my recommendations. So that's one thing you can count on. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. Have a good rest of your Monday. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Ladies, we're good.
Yay.
So how many people were on? Do you know?
There we go. Stop recording.